and I'm so scared. I can't move. I can't defend myself. I can't talk. I can't scream. And I called his name 3 times, and he came to save me. My name is Melissa. I am 29, and this is my testimony of how I came to Jesus. So I was born in Mexico to my parents. They were pretty young when they had me. I was born into the Catholic faith, so I was baptized as a little newborn. I didn't know what that meant back then, but I believe that the Catholics, they have this notion that if a baby is not baptized before, like if it happens to die, then that baby can't go to heaven. So that's what I was born into. So I was baptized as a child, as an infant. I grew up in Mexico, surrounded by my father's family. They were very loving, very, very tight-knit family, the classical Mexican family. But my parents were very young when they had me. They were in their early 20s. And so I just remember their relationship being very unstable. I remember them fighting a lot. My mom, I don't remember her ever really being happy. My dad was very emotionally and physically absent. He would be off on the weekends from work, and he would just kind of be in his own little world, in his own space, while my mom and my brother and I went out and did our thing. And so that went on until I was around 5 years old. That was when my sister was born. She was born in the United States. By then, my mom's family was in Houston. And so my mom was kind of debating on whether she wanted to stay in the U.S. or she wanted to go back. We stayed here for a little while. I remember going to pre-K and kindergarten here in the United States. And that's how I kind of learned a little bit of English. We actually ended up going back to Mexico. We were there for about 2 years. I remember doing first grade, second grade, and third grade there. I actually went to a private Catholic school, and we had the most uncomfortable uniforms. It was really hot. It's Mexico. It's hot all the time. And I remember them every Monday morning, they would have like a mass for all the kids and the teachers. And they would have us just stand in lines. And there was a lot of us. So it was really hot. It was stuffy. Multiple times, kids would pass out because it was so hot, they were dehydrated, probably needed some food. And I remember just sort of standing there and just kind of waiting for it to be over so we could get back into the classroom. We didn't even have ACs in the classroom, by the way. There was fans. So eventually, we moved back to the United States. By then, there was 4 of us, 4 children. And my mom, I guess that relationship was just not going to work out. So we moved into my grandmother's apartment. She lived there with my uncle, her youngest son. And it was a tiny 2-bedroom apartment with a 1.5 bathroom and this tiny kitchen, tiny living room. It went from 2 people to 7 people living there. So all of us, the kids and my mom, were crammed into my uncle's old room, and my uncle would either sleep on the couch or in my grandma's bed. These apartments, it was not a really nice area in Houston. It was actually a really bad area in Houston. So there was like roaches, and the place was falling apart. There was roaches everywhere. They were not scared, okay? They were not scared of us. There was rats, and I just remember that was normal to us. Like, that was life. And even though we didn't have much, we were still happy. Like, we played outside and we watched telenovelas with my grandma. And my grandmother, although she showed a lot of love towards us through acts of service, like cooking and cleaning, but she was never like loving and warm. It was never explained to me that my parents were going to separate. It just sort of happened. Like, okay, we're going to pack our things. We're going to move to the United States and just live here now with your grandmother and your uncle. And so that life that I knew, that like really tight-knit family that I had, the few friends that I had in my Catholic school, that was all like ripped out from me within a matter of like a month or 2. And I had no idea what was really going on. There was a time where my mom actually went back to Mexico for some reason or another. and they had stopped her at the border when she was trying to come back. I don't know, it could have been somewhere around 5 to 6 months. And so I felt really alone. My dad was in Mexico, my mom was in Mexico. My grandma, my sister was her favorite. So I felt really alone. And that is the first time that I remember wanting to end my life, because I just felt so utterly alone. I had never felt God in Catholic school, in Catholic Mass. I was about 10 years old. I was lashing out towards my brothers and my sister. And yeah, I felt like I had nobody to talk to. And so eventually my mom made it back somehow, back to the US. And I had written a note, I was just I've always liked to write, and I remember writing out my feelings and how I was feeling, and my mother finding that note, and she couldn't wrap her mind around why I was feeling this way. And she even went as far as to compare me to my cousin, who had her family and her parents together, and she had a really stable thing going on. And she just said, "Why can't you just be happy like her? Why can't you just be happy like her?" And I'm a child. I don't know. Actually, I don't remember what I said. I remember my grandmother and my mom butting heads a lot, because my grandmother, she can be quite controlling. And so if we were living under her roof, I guess she had this sense that she was like the matriarch, the head of the household, and she could kind of tell people what to do, like when she could come in, when she couldn't go out. If my mom wanted to hang out with her coworkers after work, that was not acceptable. Speaking of my mom's job, this is when she met her current partner, my stepdad. Eventually, I guess things got serious with them within a couple of months of them dating. We ended up moving into his apartment that he shared with 2 other roommates, and it was just a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. So one of them would sleep in one room, the other in another room, and then the other roommate would sleep in the living room. And so we moved in. We were there for about a week. I remember it being really uncomfortable, very crowded. It was so weird. It was just this overwhelming sense of my foundation being just ripped out from under me, and not knowing where I stood in life, where my dad was, what happened to my life, what happened to all my family. Now we're here living with these strange men in this tiny apartment. I didn't feel very safe. And so eventually, about a week or 2 later, they were able to obtain their own apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. So again, it was the 4 of us kids crammed into 1 bedroom. They were in the other bedroom. And this is when the abuse began. I guess he felt like, okay, I got you now, so I got you. So you can't run away. I remember when we were moving things, I had spilled a little bit of bleach. I made a bleach stain on the carpet of the apartment. And I remember him getting very upset over that, and just kind of asking, who did this? And I was so scared. I didn't say that I did it. Obviously, I didn't want to get in trouble. And I think that was the first time that I remember hearing him. He was probably hitting my mom or abusing her in some type of way. From that, it just got worse and worse and worse. They would have fights. I don't know over what. I remember a few times. One time I walked out of the bathroom. I believe it was before I went to bed. They had been fighting over something, and I just remember him just kind of standing over her and just choking her. And I'm just standing there watching this happen, paralyzed, and my mom looks terrified. And when he sees that I'm watching, he just sort of lets go. And I run into my room with my siblings. Really bad things happen in that apartment. Even though we were only there a few months, I was always very scared, very on edge. I wanted to protect my mom. At the same time, I was really angry at her. I wanted to protect my siblings. I wanted to protect myself. But again, I'm 11, 12 years old at this point. I can't do anything. And again, I start just to feel so alone and just very let down by everybody around me. And I don't have God at that point. God to me is just some sort of this like concept that the adults made up, and they forced you to recite the prayers and go to mass and write the things. But God to me is, God at this point doesn't care about me. He abandoned me. He doesn't care. That went on for years. The abuse, the domestic violence. I was never, thankfully, by the grace of God, I was never on the receiving end of that. I don't know what it was in me that stopped him from ever coming after me like that. Like, I would be put down verbally and emotionally, but never physically. I don't know what it was. But my 3 siblings, they all got like hit. My mom, for sure. We had moved into a house at this point. We had an extra room, so now it was the 2 girls, the 2 boys, and them in a room. I remember watching them fighting in the laundry room, and I remember the exact moment when he struck her in the eye, and she had this huge purple eye, and everybody saw, like my grandmother, my uncle, people saw it. Nobody cared to be like, hey, come stay with us. I just felt at that point, I felt like we had no escape. Like this was my life now. This was my life now. And then there was another thing where there was this like talk of, oh, if you're not an American, if you're not a citizen, if you don't have a social security number, then you're pretty much worthless. I remember my grandmother at one point telling me, yeah, well, I mean, you're not an American, so you're not going to be able to do anything with your life. You're not going to be able to go to college. You're going to have to work at the flea market. Like, that's going to be, like, that was what I was supposed to strive for. That was going to be, like, the highest I would ever reach. And as a 9-year-old, I remember the exact moment she told me. We were driving in the car. My uncle was driving. I was on the left passenger seat. She was over here, and she just turned around and told me that. And that made my heart sink. It made my little heart sink, and I carried that with me for so many years. Like, that little moment probably meant nothing to her. Maybe she was even joking. But to me, it was like, it hit me deep. In my head, God wasn't there for me. God, was he even real? I have no idea. My dad had abandoned us. My family had abandoned us. My mom didn't care enough about us to get us out of there. I was worthless. I wasn't going to be able to do anything with my life anyway. So why am I even alive? So I'm 13. I think I'm 13 at this point because I believe I was in 6th or 7th grade. And so again, as an outlet, because I don't have anybody to talk to, I'm right. So I'm writing in a journal, and I'm just putting down my feelings, how I feel, and how I just want to end everything. Obviously, I wasn't planning on it. Again, my journal was found, my privacy was invaded, and my mom found my note. She shared it with my stepdad. And I remember just being very upset about that, about them invading my privacy in that way, when all I needed was just somewhere to let it out because I had nobody else. I was the oldest of 5 kids at this point because my mom had gotten pregnant, and she had given birth to my sister. Yeah, I remember I was washing the dishes, and I just remember my stepdad saying something along the lines, just talking to my mom loud enough for me to hear, oh, how some people just don't appreciate life, and how I should just wait because when I have to pay bills and when I have to pay taxes, then that's when the real problems are going to begin. Like, my feelings, my problems were invalid. It just was seared into my memory. And this is when I was like, okay, I need to be a lot more careful with what I write and what I do and what I say, because I'm not receiving any support. My mom thinks I'm insane. She thinks I'm crazy. She can't wrap her mind around why I'm feeling this way. And not only that, she's sharing this with somebody that's actively making fun of me because of it. And so that's when I became, I guess you could say, more sneaky, where I would just write things, and then I would like rip them up, or I would hide my journal so they wouldn't even know that I had one. By this time, I think my mom was pregnant again with baby number 6. And so we needed somewhere bigger. We ended up moving again into a 5-bedroom home. The abuse continued even while she was pregnant. It didn't stop because she was pregnant. We stayed in this next house for the next 4 years. So I went to the same high school for 4 years. And by this time, I was like utterly depressed. I was just very, very depressed, very anxious. I was constantly on edge. My home life was coming home and like doing my homework or doing what I had to do. I used to play the piano. I would had a keyboard that my dad had bought me. But I was constantly like, okay, how's the mood? How's everybody feeling? Like, are they okay? Are they arguing? Are they fighting? Is there anything I can do? Like, what can I do to like tame the storm, to like not piss anybody off? I have to be aware. I have to be very aware. Constantly on the alert. I could never feel myself relaxing. A month or two after, by this point, I had already begun self-harming too. I remember in 7th grade, this girl was like, hey, do you cut yourself? And I'm like, no, what do you mean? What is that? And then she like pulled out her arm and she showed me her cuts. And I was so intrigued. I was like, why did you do that? And she said something like, oh, it just feels good whenever I'm angry. And I was like, I like, for some reason, that really intrigued me. You know, like a normal person would have been like, repulsed and been like, what is wrong with you? But I was like, that's very interesting. Maybe I should try that. And so I remember I went home that day and I had this like Swiss Army knife, and I took out the little knife part and I just cut myself. And it felt good. Like it felt good. It felt good to feel something other than this just overwhelming numbness and sadness and darkness that I had been living in for so many years. I made a few friends throughout my freshman year. Not very good friends, not very good influences. And so towards the end of my freshman year, I met my ex-boyfriend, my first real boyfriend. He was dressed all in black. He had blonde hair that was like down to his shoulders. He had eyeliner, black fingernails. That drew me into him. Like, he was just very different. He was not like the other kids. And we started talking, and I came to find out that he was actually a Satanist. Him and his cousin were practicing Satanism. His cousin was actually in a black metal band. And if you know anything about black metal, it originated in Norway, and they literally glorify Satan or pagan gods and goddesses. And so they were very deep into that world. But I liked him, and we began dating at the end of my freshman year. We didn't see each other through the summer. And so we dated for 2 years through my sophomore and junior year. The relationship at this point, towards the end of it, God, again, just very abusive, of course. I was mimicking what I was seeing at home. And I did hit him a few times when we would argue. He did restrain me at one point when I was being kind of feisty. And he knocked my feet from under me and just plastered me to the floor. I had a huge bruise on my hip for like a week. So my mother thought it was very important for us to check all the boxes of what the Catholic Church requires us to do, meaning like our communion, our confirmation, and just going to Mass. And so we did that. Again, I would just go do what the adults told me to do, learn my prayers, learn the things, learn the facts, regurgitate them, sit through Mass, stand up when I was asked to, kneel when I was asked to, sit back down when I was asked to. But I never encountered this God, this Jesus, or any of the saints that they talk about. So again, God was just this weird concept that the adults talked about, but I never encountered him. And so my relationship was deteriorating. Things were not good at home, of course. The abuse continued. I was now about 16. And then when my relationship ended, he did not let me go easily. He even threatened to come to my house and like shoot himself in front of my family if I didn't take him back. Somehow he let it go. Somehow I was free. I was able to free myself from that. He moved on, I moved on. And then my senior year, when he was out of my life, it was like my life did a complete 180. So even though my family life at home was still pretty bad, I had a better group of friends. I was involved in track. I was involved in art. My friends were actually they were actually encouraging me to go to class and to stay after school for extracurriculars. So once that boy was out of my life and not hovering over me and like influencing me, my life at school got really good. Like I actually really enjoyed it and I had really good friends. And I remember this one particular friend that I had in that group. We had been texting one night and I had been telling her, I just feel so depressed all the time. Like, I don't know what to do. She told me, well, just talk to Jesus. Just pray. And I was like, no, like what? Who? Talk to who? Why? Why would I do that? Like, he's not listening. Is he even real? He's like, she was so sure. She was adamant. Like if I didn't have Jesus, I don't know what I would do. That's what she said to me. And she invited me to church. And I was like, okay, sure. Like, you're my friend, let's go. And she had a car at this point because she was a junior, I was a senior. And so I remember her picking me up and actually taking me to her church. It was a Christian church, so completely different from the Catholic church that I grew up going. I don't remember the sermon. I remember feeling very strange being in church really, because we hadn't gone for a really long time. We didn't go to weekly mass. It was just we have confirmation on Tuesdays. You gotta go, and then you gotta sit through the mass. And then we talked like church or God or Jesus was like never mentioned again until next week. And so I went to her church and I sat through the sermon, and I remember during the worship, people were just like worshiping and they were just so alive. And I was like, what is happening right now? Like, what is going on? And I remember feeling the presence of God in the room, but I myself was shut off. I was shut off. I still had it in my mind that even if God was real, he didn't love me. He wasn't for me. He abandoned me. He might love these people and these people might love him, but this God doesn't love me. And so I remember sitting in the pews and this woman just coming up to me. I remember she had like a cute little red jacket on, and she was like talking to me. She's like, can I pray for you? And no one had ever prayed for me before. Not that I can consciously remember. And I was like, sure, go ahead. And so she knelt down next to me. She grabbed my hands and she just started praying, and I was just watching her. I was thinking, what are you doing, lady? What are you doing? But I felt good. Like I was feeling good. It was a really nice experience. And then afterwards, they had like a little group meeting where the youth met. And so we went over, we had a little snack, and everybody was super sweet, very nice, but I never went back after that. That was definitely the Lord seeking me out, and I knew that he was seeking me out. Now that I look back now as a believer, I can see him working in my life and like little things where he was looking out for me. He was either like sending his angels or just speaking in my mind in a way that said, no, don't go there, or don't do this, or just protecting me, even though I didn't know it at the time. So I continued to self-harm from the age of, I think I was 13 or 14, one of those, until I was about 17. One day I was just like, I can't do this to myself anymore. I can't do this. This was when I started taking more care of my body. I was running. I was eating healthy. Again, I was around better people. Better people were in my life. I just decided one day I'm not going to do it anymore. And I was just talking to a friend that told me that the spirit of self-harm, it's me literally shedding blood as a sacrifice. And so I guess maybe that was me just like rebuking that spirit. Like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I don't remember doing it ever again. So after I graduated high school, again, in my mind, I still had that mentality of like, what am I going to do? I'm still worthless. I'm not going to be able to do anything with my life. So I didn't even really bother applying to colleges. Also, my mom was very discouraging about that. She didn't want me to apply. At the last minute, literally like a month before classes began, I enrolled into a community college and I started taking classes. Yeah, I started working for Starbucks. There was a coworker of mine that I worked with at Starbucks, and he was known as the Jesus freak. Like, he would always invite us to his church, and the other coworkers would always make fun of him for it. Or they would just make fun of him because he would constantly be talking about Jesus or his church, or my church is doing this, my church is doing this. You should come. And then one day I was like, okay, fine. Let's just to shut him up, I decided to go. And so I drove there, beautiful building, Christian church. I walk in and everybody's like, hi, welcome. Everybody's like smiling. Everybody's happy. And I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? Why are you guys so happy? And so the youth was doing a separate worship from the rest of the church. And so we went into this smaller worship room, and I remember the music being really good and everybody was singing along, and I was just kind of standing there feeling very awkward. But again, I felt that the spirit of the Lord was definitely present in that room. And again, people kept approaching me, asking me how I was doing, asking if they could pray for me. I went to the church and I never went back again. Even though I was already 18 or 19 at this point, my home life was still very controlling. Like, I had the Life 360 app, not for safety, but for control. I believe that the abuse with my mother and my stepfather was still happening. I was already like 18 or 19. They were fighting in their room and I could hear them, and I was aware what was going on, and I was keeping an eye out because I always had this underlying fear that one day he was just going to go too far and he was going to end up murdering my mother. So I was always had to be on the lookout, always aware. I remember hearing a thud and my mom just sort of gasping for air, and something, I don't know what came over me, but I just had like this courage to like put my foot down and say, stop. And so I threw my door open and I barged over there into their room, literally threw the door open in the room, which I would have never dared to do that before because I was scared that I was going to be on the receiving end of that abuse. Threw the door open and I screamed at him, you need to stop this right now. As I was walking away back to my room, really on fire, I was very, very angry. He came up behind me, like he was like wanting to square up to me, an 18-year-old girl. And I turned around and I had this fire, I was so fed up with it. So many years of witnessing this. I was like, what? You're going to hit me? Do it. I dare you. And of course he didn't, because he knew that I would have called the police, of course. And immediately, whatever demons were in him backed straight down. And I ran outside and my neighbors were out there like having a little gathering. I was just kind of like playing around. And it's weird, that same night, we were just out there, me and my brother, and we saw an alien spaceship. Like, I don't know what was going on that day, but something was hovering over the house, over our street. We looked up and there was this like blue-green light, it was just kind of hovering in the air. And then suddenly it just blasts off and it just disappeared. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a drone. A plane and a drone can't go that fast. And we looked at each other like, what was that? And so I'm working at Starbucks at this point, and then I meet another guy, and we start to talk. We start, I guess you could call it dating. We were like seeing each other in secret because I was still being like very monitored. Where I was going, was I actually at work? Was I actually at school? Relationship started out fine, of course. And then 5 months into the relationship, I got pregnant. I mean, we don't have anything to our names. I'm still paying for my car. This guy doesn't even have a stable job. He's living with his dad in a trailer park. I just remember being very, very scared and thinking, no, like this cannot be happening. This can't be my life. In my head, I guess I had been brainwashed to think that getting pregnant and having a baby this young, even though I was already 20 years old at this point, means that my life was going to be basically over. He was very supportive of me. He said he was, of my decision, whatever I chose. I decided to end the pregnancy because I was really afraid. I was very, very afraid. I felt like I had no support from my family. I had no community around me. This person that I was with couldn't even rub two pennies together. And so somehow we came up with the money to have the procedure done on me. And he took care of me for the next 2 days while I was just not able to move. And yeah, that was probably one of the darkest times of my life. I regretted that instantly. Like the very next day, I was thinking, what have I done? Like, why did I do that? And that was when that deterioration of that relationship really began. He ended up moving out of state a couple of weeks later, literally 2 weeks after my procedure. He became very abusive verbally. He was very insecure, and I became very abusive verbally because in my mind, I'm trying to defend myself. So I had moved out of my parents' house because my job was still in that particular area, and I was living with a friend and her mom and her brother. So I was just crashing on the floor on a mattress. And again, I had just had an abortion. My family was like an hour away, even though they weren't supportive. And so I began to really, really, really spiral at this point. I can pinpoint this was the time where I began to seek things out that would sort of numb the pain. I had never smoked before. Well, I had once. I had never drank or gotten drunk before, but I started hanging out. I met coworkers. This one coworker in particular that introduced me to her group of friends, and they were just like party people. Like that's all they wanted to do was do drugs, drink, dance, and party. And me not having anything else, that was like, in my mind, this was what I wanted. This is what I needed. I needed to be drunk. I needed to party. I needed to find friends, even though they weren't real friends. I moved out of my friend's house back into my parents' house because my job transferred me to somewhere closer to their house. And so this is when I started to drink really heavily. I was going out every single weekend without fail. And I was surprised that my parents were letting me. I would be coming home at like 3 or 4 in the morning, just kind of sneaking in. And they would get on my case about it, but I was helping pay some of the bills. So I guess they figured, okay, let's just, loosen the leash a little bit on her. And so I was just getting blackout drunk. I was blackout drunk before we even left the house sometimes, before we even got into the car to go to the clubs, to the bars. And that was like the best time of my life back then. In my mind, I was like, this is amazing. I want to do this forever. My friends were snorting cocaine. I never dabbled in that because there was always a fear put in me that if you snort cocaine, you're going to die. And I believed that. I believed my heart would stop if I snorted a line. So I never did that, but I would drink a lot. And this went on for years, for a couple of years. And at the same time, I was actually on antidepressants because I was so badly depressed that I was actually planning out my suicide, like down to the detail. At first, I was like, well, I'm going to drive down to the beach and like just leave my car and just walk into the ocean. And I couldn't swim at that point. I was just going to walk into the ocean and just drown myself. But I was like, no, I want my organs to help people, to like be harvested. So I was thinking, okay, I have to find, I don't know if I can say gun, but I'm going to find a weapon to be able to like end my life within a good distance of a hospital, so they're able to put me on some sort of life support so they can harvest my organs and give it to people that need it. And I was planning it out to the detail. I really was just that was a really low point in my life. But the Lord had plans for me. Something prompted me to go to my counselor, my college counselor, and just tell her, this stranger that I've never met before, I told her how I was feeling. And this is like a miracle in my view. There was a community center that was offering therapy to students or low-income people. There's a woman that was my therapist. She was a young woman. She was still a student, but she just had this, I just believe that she was an angel, because from the moment that I stepped into her office, I just let it out. And she just held me, and I think she was an angel. The best that she could do just to keep me alive at that point was to prescribe me antidepressants. I was on Paxil for about 3 or 4 months. My prescription ran out and I wasn't able to get a refill. And I was drinking along with taking my antidepressants, which you're not supposed to do, because I'm not sure what happens, but I think it enhances the feelings of depression. And so I didn't care though. I was still depressed. I felt like this happiness that the medication gave me was so fake. Like, okay, yeah, I feel good, but inside I was still dead. I didn't feel joy. I felt happy. When my prescription ran out and I had to like stop cold turkey because I couldn't get an appointment with the doctor for a week, that was probably one of the worst things I've ever experienced, was the withdrawal from the antidepressants. I would keep myself awake because the night terrors and the nightmares that I would experience were so bad that I was like, I am not sleeping tonight. There's no way. I was getting attacked so badly in my dreams and during my sleep. It was awful. I had this constant headache, constant ringing in my ears. I was always shaky. And this went on for about 2 weeks. And mind you, I had only been on them for about 5 months. Eventually, I detoxed from that. And I was still like talking to this guy, the one that I had an abortion with. He was in another state, and we were just like not able to let go of each other. There was some sort of soul tie, something there that was just, we were so meshed together, especially by this really traumatic and dark experience like the abortion, that we just couldn't let go of each other. But eventually we did cut contact for good. This was around the time where I had saved enough money to move out of my parents' house into another city. So I moved to Austin to go to university. When I moved to Austin, again, I was still very depressed. Still, moving out was really hard financially, emotionally, mentally. I lived with a roommate, one of my friends. I've made college friends, and again, we we were just partying. I wasn't making that much money, but somehow we were able to party and drink and black out. And yeah, that was my life for the next couple of years until I was about 23. I actually dropped out of college or university because I just couldn't pay for it. I didn't want to go into a lot of debt. Right around this time, I started to become very interested in yoga, really like seeking. I knew that I wanted to connect to a higher power, and I believed in a higher power, but it wasn't God. It was like Mother Nature. It was like spirit. The boyfriend that I was with at the time, this was before I moved out. This was when I was still living in Houston, the one that I had the abortion with. We visited the Austin area, and we actually took psilocybin mushrooms together with his cousin. And I had no idea what psilocybin mushrooms were. They just handed me a mushroom and I ate it. And I had no expectations. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what they were. And so I just remember in my mind back then, I was like, this is God. This is what God is. It's the unity. It's the feeling. It's like the trees were talking to me. Everything was just beautiful and everything was one. So in my mind, I had experienced God then. And I think that was what launched me into this like journey of spirituality, and me being launched into that higher consciousness really just opened up my eyes to there is more to this life. Like maybe there is a God, but it's not the God in the church, not in the God in the Catholic Church or the Christian Church. It's just Mother Nature. It's just the universe. It's just that oneness, right? We're all one. When I was living in Austin, I met another guy that introduced me to LSD. And I remember my first time taking LSD, again, I had no expectations. I didn't really know what acid was. And so we were out hiking, we took LSD together, and I experienced again that feeling of bliss and unity. And I just felt like I could talk to the trees, and the trees loved me, and I loved them. And I was like, okay, God is nature. Nature made us. We come from her. And this must be what is the truth. This must be what is it. And I did LSD a few more times, trying to seek out that feeling again, but I never found it. On the contrary, I had some what they would call bad trips, because I was not doing it too much, but I was doing it to get something out of it. I was taking it because I was, again, feeling so depressed, still feeling depressed, very sad, empty. Life has no meaning. I'm just working to live. And so I would take LSD alone in my room, and I would just like hide under the covers, trying to have like a spiritual awakening, a third eye opening, something, anything that would make me feel better, that would connect me, make me one with the universe. I would have visions, I would hear voices during those trips with either psilocybin or LSD. I would see colors, and I would look up, okay, green, that's the heart chakra, and this is what it means, and I need to do this, and I need to meditate on my heart chakra and take cacao. And so that was me, obviously, that was me seeking out God, but God to me was the universe, nature. Right before COVID hit, I became really into yoga and meditation, like particularly like Buddhist meditation. I would play Buddhist chants on my headphones, and I would hide in the closet and just cross my legs, and I would sit there and chant for an hour or two, trying to reach some sort of enlightenment. It didn't work. I became really frustrated, but I kept at it. I would chant, I would meditate, I would do yoga. And though it did help me to lift my mood, it would eventually always wear out. I would always have to come back to it to like get my fill, and then the world would just kind of drain me, and then I would have to come back for more, and then I would be drained, and then sometimes it didn't even work. I didn't achieve that. I didn't achieve it. Sometimes it just wouldn't work for me. And so I started practicing a lot of yoga very, very religiously right when COVID hit in March. I was having the best time of my life. I wasn't working. I had some savings, so I was able to pay my rent and pay my bills. And in my mind, I was connecting to the energy that flows through all of us, right? The oneness, the Brahman. Again, like I would have to constantly come back for more. I was dabbling in tarot cards. I was doing readings for myself every night, every morning. I was doing readings for my friends over FaceTime, over my coworkers. And it worked. I mean, these cards, they are divination, and they will, I won't say that they will tell your future, but it's almost like they tell you what you want to hear, because nobody knows your future other than the Lord, other than God. And yeah, I had crystals, I would chant, I had candles around my room, and I was doing tarot, and I was like practicing New Age witchcraft, even though I didn't know what that was at the time. The New Age wasn't like a huge thing as it is now. And I remember this particular instance. I had a cat, and I was living alone in my apartment. I had taken like half a tab of LSD. Again, I was really depressed. I wanted to feel good. And I came out of the bathroom, and my cat is just like looking in a corner. She's just sitting there looking at the corner, and then she's looking up, and then she looks to the side, and then she's just like following something with her gaze. And I look over, and I'm like, what are you doing? There's nothing there. There's nothing there. And I start to become really, really scared. Like there was obviously something there that I couldn't see, but she could, and I felt it. And I called my friend. I didn't know. I didn't pray back then. If I prayed to the universe or to Buddha. And so I called my friend, and I like stepped out of the house I stepped out of my apartment and just went for a little walk, talked to my friend, and just called it a night, went to sleep. During the height of COVID in May, I met my now husband. We immediately connected. Like it was just instant connection. I liked him, he liked me, and we started hanging out. I was still practicing the yoga. I was still doing the tarot. I still had crystals. I was still doing my Buddhist chants. And then about 7 months into our relationship, I became pregnant. And again, that fear of, I can't do this. Do we not have like a lot of stability? Although I had more than I did back when I was 20 years old, we still didn't have a lot of stability. I was very scared. And he was just happy. He was just happy. He knew everything was going to be okay. And so I was like, okay, very, very scary. While I was pregnant with my son, we moved into a new place, and there was a church literally within walking distance, a Baptist church. And I remember driving by it, and multiple times him telling me, hey, we should go to this church. And I was like, nah, I've tried that already. No, that's not for me. Like I have my crystals, I have my yoga, I have my tarot cards, I have my Buddha. Like, I don't think so. And so, but he told me that a few times, like we should try going to this church. After I gave birth to my son, I'm not sure what shifted, but I was like, okay, Dad, let's just walk to the church. So I remember my son was like 2 weeks old. I shouldn't have been out of bed at this point, but we walked to church, and we sit through the service, and all these people are like coming, like, oh, cute baby, like coming up to us, trying to talk to us. We just went into the service, and then we just went home. I don't think we went back for a really long time again. I did my yoga teacher training in the fall of 2020. It was mostly virtual, But before I even had my child, before I even gave birth, I had already been certified as a yoga teacher. So we studied the origins of yoga. We studied Hinduism. We studied a lot of gods and goddesses and what all the poses meant and what gods and goddesses they were supposed to be invocating, pretty much. And I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. This is what I need. This is what I need. I need to be a yogi. I was a yogi. I wanted to practice and I wanted to teach. I didn't get a yoga teaching job until my son was about 4 months old. The same studio that trained me in Austin offered me a substitute position. And so I started subbing as a yoga teacher. As you walk into the yoga studio, there's Hindu deities everywhere. Just everywhere you look, can't escape them. And so I started teaching, and in my mind, I was getting closer to God this way. I was immersing myself into the world of spirituality, and I was around other like-minded spiritual people. And so I was a yoga teacher for a couple of years. Yeah, we would go to church randomly here and there whenever, like, we would remember, oh, it's Sunday, let's go to church. But nothing in that regular. We started having issues in our marriage, of course. It was our first year being together, like really settling down together as a family. It was our first time raising a baby. It was really hard. And so it got to a point where we were thinking we need to seek counseling because things are getting pretty rocky. And so we were not making that much money. So we knew we couldn't pay for therapy. We actually went to a therapist, a professional therapist, but it was way too expensive. We just couldn't afford it. And so we contacted the church that we lived close to, and they offered to give us biblical therapy, biblically based couples therapy for free. And so we were like, sure, let's go. I had tried to read the Bible a couple of times before, but I could never understand it. It was like a foreign language to me. And so I had like zero knowledge of scripture by then. The pastor that was counseling us, he kept bringing up a lot. We weren't married at this point legally. We were just together. He kept bringing up a lot of things that we were doing within our marriage and our lives that weren't right or that were sin. We were sinning, basically. And I had a very strong, like, oh, you cannot tell me that I'm sinning. Like, sin is not real because that's not what my religions say it is. And that's not what the Buddhists say. I believed in karma back then. Like, I believed in reincarnation. I believed that this was like my 10,000th life, and I had been a hummingbird before. And so sin to me and the concept of Jesus washing us free of our karma, of our sins, it just didn't make logical sense to me. And I also didn't want to accept that. I didn't want to accept, like, no, like, I have to work for this. I have to work for my freedom, for my ascension back to source. It can't just be given to me. That doesn't make any sense. And so the pastor kept telling us, you should read the Bible. You should read it. You should start with the book of John. Just start with the book of John. And I was like, okay, whatever. I think I tried to read the book of John, but I didn't really get much into it. Again, I was very, very heavily into New Age, witchcraft, and yoga. The Bible was just another religion, right? Like, they all lead to the same, in my mind, they all lead to the same conclusion, to the same place. Whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're Muslim, whether you're a Christian. In my mind back then, it was all leading to one source. We make it through the couples counseling, which was about 6 or 8 weeks, I can't remember. And it really did help. It helped us to not only like communicate better, but like connect to the pastor and his wife. And so we ended up moving again to a bigger place, not too far from that church. So we were still kind of going. I was also teaching a class on Sunday mornings, which is, if you know anything about the yoga world, that's like peak prime class. So I was making good money teaching a 10:30 Sunday morning class. And so I was very, very reluctant to give that up. But something in me was like, no, you need to go to church more. You need to go to church more. I was starting to make friends here and there at church. And so eventually I was like, okay, I'll give it up. And so I ended up giving up my Sunday morning class at this really nice studio in Austin. And I started going to church. We started actually like going to church every Sunday if we could make it. My husband was like, you should get baptized. And I was like, why? No, like, I'm a yogi. I don't believe in Jesus. I believe in Christ consciousness, and I believe that Jesus came to the world to teach us things, and then that's it. Like, he was an ascended master in my view back then. But he kept at it. He was like, you should get baptized. You should get baptized. He would just bring it up every now and again. All right, so around this time, it is 2023. We're living in a new apartment, 2-bedroom. My husband has his office, and we have our bedroom. I'm also teaching a lot of classes. I'm teaching about 8 to 10, depending if I pick up any classes throughout the week. So I'm still pretty heavily in the yoga world, in New Age. But I'm also going to church at the same time. I'm still in the New Age, but then Jesus to me is not the Son of God. He is an ascended master that came to teach us something. And I would try to connect with him, and I would pray to him. And I remember one time in early 2023, just being very tired, just very burnt out, very angry, very depressed, out of nowhere. And I just hear Matthew 4:4. Matthew 4:4. I was like, Matthew 4:4. I don't remember if I even had a Bible at this point. I think I just looked it up on Google, Matthew 4:4. Matthew 4:4 is the scripture that says, man cannot live on bread alone, but by the word of God. Something along those lines. And that was him speaking to me. You can't keep going this way. You need to feed on my word. You're eating sand and you're drinking ocean water, and then you're begging for more. I needed him, and he knew, and he was telling me, you need to come to me. But I was still pretty hesitant. Okay, so the fall of 2023, I had started to deepen my walk with Jesus more and more throughout 2023. And so at the fall of 2023, I was like, okay, you know what? Let's just baptize me. Let's do it. I want to do it. I want to give my life to Christ. If he is the truth, if he is the true God, then I want to follow him. We called my husband's uncle. We called my husband's uncle, who's a preacher in Colorado. And we told him I wanted to get baptized, and we set a date. We were supposed to go to Colorado anyway for a wedding in late September. And okay, well, let's just do it after the wedding. We'll do it at this lake. And so the date was set, the time was set, it was gonna happen. A couple of weeks before the trip, I was just browsing Instagram or browsing Facebook. I come across this story about a little girl that had been hurt really badly. And I don't want to go into the details, but this story really, really got to me. This girl obviously had passed away. And at the time, I had a 2-year-old boy. I had a 2-year-old. And so in my mind, my child and this little girl were the same. I couldn't imagine or fathom something horrible, something as horrible happening to my child like it did to this girl. This story, I don't know what it was about it. Maybe it was the fact that my child was so close in age to her. It just stuck with me, and it just tormented me. I was constantly looking at the news, seeing if there was any sort of updates. Has anyone been arrested for this crime? Is anyone paying for what they did to this little girl? One way or another, more stories like that, of that similar fashion, started popping up on my feed on YouTube and on Facebook. Like, I'm just seeing story after story after story of children being harmed. And I am just a mess at this point. I am a mess. Like, I am crying while I'm cooking. I'm crying in the shower. I'm crying looking at my son. I'm just constantly thinking about it. Like, how is this possible? How can this happen? And at this point, I'm really questioning my decision on getting baptized. Why would I want to give my life to a God that is almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing, and still allows these things to happen to the most innocent of beings, our children? And so I'm really actually leaning to cancel my baptism. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. This is terrible. This God doesn't care about his children. He doesn't care about his people. And I'm very sensitive to energies. And so I am feeling this darkness just washing over me every day for days and days, weeks. And so I'm hiding in the closet, sitting on the floor, crying, sobbing, asking God, why would you let this happen? And it feels so visceral to me, like so visceral. I can't wrap my mind around why this type of evil would be allowed to exist by God. Why not just use your powers to destroy all evil? That's what I would say to him. What are you doing? Why do I want to give my life to you if you allow these things to happen? So while this is still going on, I'm still being tormented. I'm still very depressed. I'm still very anxious. One morning, I was a baker back then, so I used to bake sourdough for farmers markets. One morning, very, very early, I'm waking up at 3 a.m. If it was 3:30, 3 in the morning, I wake up to go preheat my oven. And so I'm waking up, I go over to the kitchen. It's still very dark. It's 3 in the morning. I preheat my oven for an hour so that I can put the first batch of bread into the oven at 4. Preheat the oven, and then I go to my couch, have my phone, and I put an alarm for an hour. I say, I'm just gonna sleep until this alarm goes off, and then I'll put the first batch of bread into the oven. I lie down. We had one couch, and it had 3 seats. And so I lie down on 2 seats, and I'm curled up, and it's fall in Texas. It's not cold, so I'm not covered up. I'm lying on my side, taking up 2 of the cushions. I'm lying on my side, taking up 2 of the cushions, and I fall asleep pretty instantly. And the next thing I remember is being outside of my body, just sort of hovering, and being able to see into the living room, being able to see into the kitchen, being able to see into the hallway. And then somehow I'm dropped back into my body. But at this point, I can't move. And I know what it is now. It's called sleep paralysis. I'm experiencing sleep paralysis for the first time in my life. And so I am curled up. I can't move. My eyes are closed, but I can see what's going on. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I start to get very, very scared. Like, this overwhelming fear just starts to come over me, and I can't move. And I sense a darkness just creeping in from the hallway and like slowly just slithering on the floor, making its way to me. And I knew that its one goal was to get to me, was to take over my body and to get inside of me. I just knew, I felt that. And I'm so scared. I can't move. I can't defend myself. I can't talk. I can't scream. But I can get out in my head, Jesus. And I called his name 3 times. And he came to save me. He appeared to me in my living room and sat down on that 3rd cushion right next to my head. he sat down, and there was just the most pure light. It wasn't blinding like the sun, but it was just the pure light that's just emanating from everything around him. And as soon as he appeared and sat down next to my head, that dark thing stopped dead in its tracks and started to slither right back out. And this overwhelming peace just flooded my entire body. I was not scared. The fear was absolutely just gone. And then the next thing I know, I'm awake. And it felt like 5 minutes had passed. I felt like I had been asleep for 5 minutes, but it had been an hour because my alarm was going off and it's 4 a.m. And so I had an encounter with Jesus that day. He actually saved me. When I say Jesus saved me, he actually saved me. He saved my life that morning. And he didn't speak. He didn't say anything. His presence was enough to... the darkness cannot touch the light. The thing, which I know now was a demon, was not able to even stand being in his presence. It had to scurry right back out to wherever it came from. And from that morning on, from that day, I have not experienced any type of torment of that fashion, where it was just relentless torment day after day after day, and I could not escape it. I was delivered from whatever spirit, whatever darkness had been plaguing me. The goal was to prevent me from being baptized, from giving my life to Jesus. But after this encounter, there's no way. Like, he saved me, and that was Jesus, because I called Jesus, and he came. He came to claim me, and I am his, and my body is his temple. No darkness can dwell in me anymore. Fast forward to a couple of days later, or a week later, we went to Colorado, went to the wedding. I got baptized in the coldest lake with the beautiful view of the mountains and my family surrounding me. It was a great experience. My walk with Christ since that day, since he saved me, I cannot deny him anymore. Like, there's no way that I can say he's not real, or that it's just the universe, or it's just oneness, or it's Krishna that came and saved me, or it was Buddha, or it was Lakshmi. No, it was Jesus. He came when I needed help, and he saved me. He literally saved me. So after I got baptized, the Lord has really been dismantling my view of what it means to be provided for, because I never grew up with a strong father figure. All the men in my life basically would just abandon me, or disappointed me, or hurt me. And so that was a lot of my hesitation of going towards him, of going towards the Father, was, if my earthly father can't even protect me or provide for me, how can I expect someone that I can't even see to protect me and provide for me? It just didn't make any logical sense. He has really, really worked in me ever since that day, since I got baptized, since he saved me. It's been 2 years now to the day that happened. And so he has barely been working into helping me really fully surrender. I no longer teach yoga. I don't have crystals. I don't have tarot cards. I took down my Ganesh poster. I took down my Lakshmi poster. I don't practice divination. I don't practice yoga. And the only one I pray to is him. And so he has been really stripping me of all these things that I thought I needed. But really the only thing that I need is him. And even in this season of life that I'm in right now, just being a mother to now 2 beautiful boys, and thinking that that's not enough, I need to do more, he has really been humbling me and showing me, no, this is what I have called you to do at this season of life. This is how you advance the kingdom for me, is through stewarding these two young boys to become strong, Jesus-seeking men. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster and adventure with Jesus, but he is always there for me. And I just feel so filled with his spirit that every time, I've also been deeply in the word more this year than ever before. So every time that a lie from the enemy tries to come in, like, oh, whatever lie it is, the Holy Spirit is quick to whisper truth and to remind me of what Jesus said. And the darkness cannot stand to be in the presence of light. That has been the biggest challenge for me as somebody that was always striving to do more and earn my salvation, earn my ascension, earn my living, earn this, earn that, and do more, work more. You have to do more. And so right now I'm in a season of surrendering and just really doing less and just being in his presence. There's nothing that compares, nothing that is better. Just nothing that's better than just basking in his love and his presence.